The richest man on the planet sold almost every house he owned, crashed on friends' couches, and once slept on his factory floor using a sleeping bag he grabbed off the shelf. Meanwhile, he casually dropped $44 billion to buy Twitter like it was an impulse purchase at checkout. So how does a man worth over $200 billion actually spend his money? The answer is way weirder than you think. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're breaking down exactly how Elon Musk spends his billions, and I promise you, this is not your typical billionaire spending video. There are no mega yachts. There's no island in the Caribbean. There's no collection of 500 watches. Elon's spending habits are genuinely unlike any other billionaire on Earth, and honestly, whether you love the guy or can't stand him, there are some real lessons buried in how he thinks about money. So let's get into it. Alright, let's start with the thing that shocks most people. Elon Musk does not live like a billionaire. Not even close. Not even a little bit. Back in 2020, Musk tweeted, and I quote, "I am selling almost all physical possessions. Will own no house." And people thought he was joking. He wasn't. He actually sold 7 properties in California, including a $29 million Bel Air mansion and a $75 million estate that he sold to a Chinese billionaire. 7 houses gone. So where did the richest man in the world move? A roughly 375-square-foot prefabricated home made by a company called Boxable, right next to the SpaceX launch site in Boca Chica, Texas. We're talking about a house that costs around $50,000. That is not a typo. $50,000. Your apartment might cost more than Elon Musk's house. Now, some people call this a publicity stunt. Maybe. But here's what's interesting. People close to him have confirmed that he genuinely does not care about luxury living. He reportedly rotates between staying at friends' homes, sleeping at the office, and crashing at this tiny house near the launch pad. He said multiple times that his primary residence is literally whatever SpaceX or Tesla facility he's working at that week. And look, before you think this is some kind of humble brag, let's be clear. The man has access to anything he wants. He could buy a neighborhood, he could buy a city block. He just doesn't seem to want to. His ex-wife Justine and his former partner Grimes have both talked about how almost eerily indifferent he is to personal comfort. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because if he's not spending billions on houses and luxury goods, where is all that money actually going? And that's where this story gets wild. This is the part that separates Musk from pretty much every other billionaire. Most ultra-wealthy people diversify. They buy stocks, bonds, real estate, art, sports teams. Safe stuff. Boring stuff. Musk does the exact opposite. He bets almost everything on his own companies. And I mean everything. Let's break this down. SpaceX. Musk founded SpaceX in 2002 with about $100 million of his own money from selling PayPal. What most people don't know is that SpaceX almost died. The first 3 rocket launches failed. 3 consecutive failures. Each one burning through tens of millions of dollars. After the 3rd failure, Musk was nearly bankrupt. He had enough money for one final launch. If that 4th rocket had failed, SpaceX was done. Game over. But it didn't fail, and today, SpaceX is valued at over $180 billion. It's the most dominant launch provider on Earth, and it's literally the company that NASA depends on to get astronauts to the International Space Station. Musk has continued pouring money into SpaceX. The Starship program alone, that massive stainless steel rocket you've probably seen, has reportedly cost billions in development. And he's funding a significant chunk of that personally. Tesla. Here's a stat that will blow your mind. In 2008, during the financial crisis, both SpaceX and Tesla were about to go bankrupt at the same time. Musk had to choose between letting one die and saving the other, or going all in on both. He put his last $35 million into Tesla, borrowed money from friends to pay rent, and somehow kept both companies alive. Today, Tesla is worth over $800 billion and has single-handedly forced the entire auto industry to go electric. But Musk has repeatedly sold Tesla stock, not to buy yachts, but to fund his other ventures. Which brings us to the elephant in the room. Twitter, now X. In 2022, Musk bought Twitter for $44 billion. Let that number sink in. $44 billion. To finance it, he sold roughly $23 billion in Tesla stock, took on about $13 billion in loans, and brought in equity partners for the rest. Now, whether you think that purchase was genius or insanity depends on who you ask. The company's value has reportedly dropped significantly since the acquisition. Some estimates say it's worth as little as $19 billion now. That means Musk potentially lit $25 billion on fire. On a social media app, but here's the thing, he didn't buy Twitter to make money. He said repeatedly he bought it because he believes controlling a global communication platform is critical for, in his words, the future of civilization. You can agree or disagree, but the point is this, the man spent $44 billion on an ideology, not an investment. And there's more. Neuralink, his brain-computer interface company, has received hundreds of millions in funding. The Boring Company, his tunnel-digging venture, started with his own capital. And his newest venture, XAI, his artificial intelligence company, is competing directly with OpenAI and has already raised billions in a space that requires enormous upfront spending on computing power. Add it all up, and you start to see the pattern. Musk doesn't spend money on things. He spends money on missions, and that distinction is actually really important if you're trying to understand how he thinks. But okay, he's not a total monk. The man does have some expensive toys. And stick around because what he drives and how he flies is actually pretty fascinating. Alright, so Musk isn't living in a cave. He does spend money on some personal things. Let's talk about what he drives and how he gets around. Cars first, obviously, he drives Teslas. You'd expect that. He's been seen in Model S, Model X, and he was one of the first to drive the Cybertruck. But here's what's interesting about his car history. Before going all in on Tesla, Musk owned a McLaren F1. And this wasn't just any McLaren F1. He bought it for about $1 million in 1999, right after selling his first company, Zip2. There's actually a famous video of him taking delivery of it, grinning like a kid on Christmas, saying it was the most expensive car in the world. He later crashed it on Sand Hill Road in Silicon Valley. No insurance. No joke. The car was worth $1 million, uninsured, and he totaled it. That's either the most baller thing ever or the most reckless, depending on your perspective. He also owned a 1967 Jaguar E-Type and a Porsche 911 Turbo at various points. But in recent years, he's pretty much exclusively driving Teslas and, most recently, the Cybertruck around Austin and the SpaceX facilities. Now, the private jet. This is where the I don't care about material possessions narrative gets a little complicated. Musk owns a Gulfstream G700, which is one of the most expensive private jets you can buy. We're talking $78 million. Before that, he had a Gulfstream G650ER, which costs around $65 million. And he uses them constantly. Flight tracking data, which became a massive controversy when a college student named Jack Sweeney tracked his jet on Twitter, showed that Musk's jet was flying almost every single day, sometimes multiple flights per day, often short distances. Now, Musk has defended this by saying his schedule is so packed across multiple companies in different states that commercial flying is literally impossible. And honestly? When you run Tesla in Austin, SpaceX in Boca Chica and Hawthorne, the Boring Company in Vegas, and Neuralink in Fremont, that argument holds some weight. He's not flying to vacation spots. The flight logs show him bouncing between factories and launch sites. But let's be real. A $78 million jet is a $78 million jet. The estimated annual operating cost for a Gulfstream G700 is somewhere between $3 million and $5 million per year when you factor in fuel, crew, maintenance, and hangar fees. That's one of his few genuine luxury expenses, and it's a big one. Still, compare that to Jeff Bezos, who owns a $500 million mega yacht, or Larry Ellison, who owns an entire Hawaiian island, or Bernard Arnault's art collection worth hundreds of millions, and Musk's personal spending is genuinely modest by billionaire standards. It's kind of insane, actually. So if he's not at home relaxing and he's not out shopping, what does a normal day actually look like for Elon Musk? And this part, honestly, might be the most important section of this whole video. Elon Musk's daily routine is, frankly, not something most people would want. And I think that's an important thing to say out loud because social media tends to glamorize this stuff. Musk has said in multiple interviews that he works between 80 and 120 hours per week. Let me put that in perspective. A standard work week is 40 hours. Musk is doing double to triple that. That's not a flex. That's a lifestyle that has cost him relationships, time with his children, and by his own admission, his mental and physical health at various points. Here's roughly what a typical day looks like based on interviews and profiles written about him. He usually sleeps about 6 hours a night, going to bed around 1 a.m. and waking up around 7 a.m. He said he's tried sleeping less, but his productivity actually drops, so 6 hours is his minimum. He immediately checks his phone for critical emails and messages, often handling urgent issues before he even gets out of bed. He reportedly skips breakfast most days or grabs something quick. He doesn't have some elaborate morning routine with cold plunges and journaling. He said his morning routine is basically, wake up, shower, phone, go. His day is split into 5-minute blocks. This is a technique he's used for years. Every 5 minutes of his day is scheduled and allocated to a specific task or meeting. Most of his time goes to engineering and design work. He said repeatedly that he spends about 80% of his time on engineering problems, not CEO stuff like finance or HR. He'll be on the factory floor at Tesla looking at production line bottlenecks. He'll be in the SpaceX engine bay reviewing Raptor engine data. He's not a suit anti-executive. He's a hands-on engineer who happens to also be the CEO. For food, he's not exactly a health nut. He's talked about his love of barbecue, French food, and whiskey. He's admitted to eating way too much, and he's been open about using intermittent fasting and Wegovy to manage his weight. No personal chef preparing kale smoothies. Just a guy who stress eats at his desk during 16-hour workdays. For entertainment, he's a self-admitted gamer. He plays video games late at night to unwind. Elden Ring, Diablo, Overwatch, Civilization. He's a legit gamer. He also reads constantly, mostly science fiction, physics, and engineering textbooks. He said that he basically taught himself rocket science by reading textbooks, which sounds absurd but is apparently verified by early SpaceX engineers. The point is this: Musk's biggest expenditure isn't money. It's time. He spends almost every waking hour on his companies. That's where his real wealth goes. Not into bank accounts, not into luxury goods, but into hours on the factory floor, hours reviewing engineering data, and hours making decisions that either make or lose billions.